Good evening. My name is Kate Spencer-Ellis and I am the head of sixth form here at Forest. Welcome to our second in our Michaelmas term series of our Forest Focus webinar series. As always, we're not expecting any technical difficulties, but please do bear with us if we encounter any problems. This webinar this evening will be available from the Forest YouTube page under the tab titled Live, in case you'd like to promote it or share it with other Forest parents and carers. We'd be really grateful if at the end of the presentation, you'd be kind enough to complete our feedback survey, because we always seek to improve what we do and meet your needs. At the end, we will probably have time to answer a few questions, and we'll do our best to get as many as possible. Our next webinar after this is on Wednesday, the 27th of September, and it's part of Sustainability Week, and the theme is climate optimism. Without further ado, I'd really like to give you a brief introduction to our speakers this evening, who will be talking about the provision of mental health support here at Forest. Jeff Kane is the Deputy Head Safeguarding here at Forest. He has vast experience in many aspects of education, in particular safeguarding, child protection, and pastoral care. He is an NSPCC accredited safeguarding and child protection trainer, and as someone who has the privilege of working with him on a day-to-day basis, I can say with conviction that he makes a genuine and positive impact on the lives of young people. The other person I am also very pleased to work with is Amanda Gale, who is our project manager at Place to Be and oversees the whole school service, supporting counsellors to deliver therapeutic support to pupils, providing a range of interventions including one-to-one counselling and group work, supporting teachers, parents and carers, and the school as a whole. I really hope that you enjoy this evening's talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Spencer-Ellis. Good evening, everybody. I hope you're really well. It's a great opportunity for me to spend a little bit of time with you outlining our provision of mental health support here at Forest School. I'm going to give quite a lot of information tonight, so the questions may well come after. Please don't ever hesitate to be in touch at any point if you wish to discuss any aspect of our provision. So as Ms. Spencer-Ellis kindly said, my name is Jeff Kane, I'm the Deputy Head, and I'm responsible for safeguarding and child protection. I'm also responsible for our provision of mental health support, and I also take the lead on our approach to equality, diversity and inclusion across the school. I've been at Forest, this is my 12th year at Forest School, part of the furniture. So today, what do we hope to achieve over the next hour between 6 and 7? Well, first of all, we're going to have a little conversation about the current picture of mental health. I know huge numbers of our Forest community are hugely well informed when it comes to mental health on a national picture. So we're just going to go through what's actually happening. I'm going to discuss what the collaboration between the agencies has to be, between Forest School, between our excellent provision on site provided by Place to Be, and we're very fortunate to have Amanda as our outstanding school project manager, and indeed the work that we must do with external agencies. I'm going to cover a little bit around what staff are trained in, what information we give to staff around how we can look for earliest signs and how we can intervene at the earliest possible opportunities by using protective factors and risk factors. I'm going to talk through some of the most common mental health concerns that we see, which will absolutely match the national picture. All through it, I'm hopefully going to give some advice, some tips for Forest parents and carers, knowing full well that many of you are experts in this field. And that's where it'll be really useful for you to come back to me over the next days, weeks and months of things that you think work really well and things indeed that we can learn. Just a word on self-care. I'm very conscious that whenever I discuss mental health and indeed safeguarding child protection, there's huge numbers of us with significant lived experience. And I am going to be touching on things such as self-harm and suicidal ideation. So please look after yourselves. If you need to take a moment away from the screen, I'm not going to go into any detail. So I'm really confident that I we will be able to hold everyone through this conversation, but please do look after yourself if there's anything that's very close to home, of course. So first of all, we are bombarded by stories of mental health, in terms of the rise, in terms of the frequency, in terms of the number of young people who are finding difficulty in mental health, and indeed the Times they're suggesting that many young people are hiding mental health concerns from parents and carers, and the number of children in mental health crisis at record high in England, reported very recently by The Guardian. And of course, we are acutely aware that post-pandemic, where so many young people and families experience significant difficulties, that we may well be seeing some of those things manifesting as we speak. I think the most important thing is to get to absolutely the baseline this evening and to identify what we're talking about. This current generation are talking more about their mental health than any previous generation, and that's a really positive thing. First of all, we're talking about not just in terms of the absence of a mental disorder, we're talking about a state of well-being, because what we try and tell our young people is we all have mental health in the same way that we have physical health. And sometimes we are in a state of good mental health, and sometimes we're in a state of poor mental health, which doesn't necessarily mean we have a mental health condition. I think the best description of what we should be evaluating mental health against comes from the Mental Health Foundation, that says we need to consider our ability to learn. And indeed, if our mental health is beginning to impact upon our ability to learn, that would be a concern. Our ability to feel, to express, and to manage a range of emotions, to be able to regulate, to be able to ensure that we can manage our day-to-day work or life in school or indeed life at home. Maintaining good and positive relationships with others. And then lastly, managing change and uncertainty. Now, of course, lots of these things are part of teenage life and adolescent life, and will go in flux throughout their years into adulthood and beyond. I think what I would say is that if any of these things, or indeed more than one, are becoming fixed or more permanent, then that's a time to possibly consider that someone's mental health is becoming a concern. The NHS Digital Survey has been done 4 times, first time in 2017, and this involved 3,000 children across the United Kingdom. It's the same sample that they go back and visit, and the 2022 results were published not that long ago. And what it said was that in 2022, 18% of children 7 to 16 years and 22% of children 17 to 24 years had a probable mental health disorder. And you can see how it went up to 1 in 6 for children of 7 to 16, and that stayed pretty constant for that age group. So that's us looking from kind of the bottom of the prep school to the top of the middle school to year 11. In terms of our oldest students, sixth form, it was 1 to 10 in 2017. It was 1 to 6 through the waves of 2020 and 21. And in 2022, it's now estimated to be 1 to 4 of young people who have a probable mental disorder. And that's really concerning. And that's significantly impacting upon that age range. And then, of course, I talk a lot to parents and carers around social media. And the concerns here relate to the 24/7 society, the constant being on, never being able to be off and give your mind some space to rest and refresh. And certainly this is exacerbated for young people who are experiencing difficulties in mental health, that it's likely to be worse for them online. And indeed, they report feeling less psychologically safe than young people of the same age who are not experiencing mental health concerns. You'll have heard a lot about access to services, and this is bang up to date. So this has been released in the last few months. And in terms of children and young people accessing mental health services, it's increasing. This is taken directly from the government data set. And that shows how important this is. And what we as a school want to be able to do is to be able to intervene at the earliest possible opportunity to try and ensure the best possible outcomes for the young people and indeed the parents and carers. This is an interesting diagram, which I hope you can see, which was taken from the National Education Union of Teachers Conference in April. There's 18,000 education professionals that have contributed to this data. So that's teachers, teaching assistants, everyone involved in education. And what it's saying is some concerning things. So for example, 28% of that 18,000 say that they have no access to a school or a college counsellor. We, of course, are committed to our partnership with Place to Be. 45% of people who took part in that settings that took part in the study don't have access to a school nurse. Again, we have a senior school nurse, we have a prep school nurse. And I wanted to tell parents and carers that I'm delighted that over the summer, we appointed Dr. Maggie, who is now our Director of Medical Provision at Forest School. And I'm having worked very closely with a number of families where we have mental health, medical, SEND intersecting. Dr. Maggie, I'm sure, is going to be a terrific add to our team. And I would encourage any families to contact her at any point. Please do contact her via me or via the school office. We'll provide her email for you. In terms of schools that have mental first aid lead, a mental health lead, 50% said they didn't at all, and 35% it wasn't enough. I'm very pleased to be the mental health lead at Forest School, and obviously the work that I do is largely through the outstanding safeguarding and child protection team that we have at Forest, which of course includes Mrs. Milton, our Deputy Head Pastoral, Miss Spencer Ellis, Miss Leshmere Smith, Mr. Sloan, are excellent heads of section. It's really important that we create close and frequent and open communication with parents and carers to discuss these very difficult aspects and these conversations that we need to have. Something I think that's always useful and something I've been really clear with our staff about is to just be clear who does what. I talk a lot about staying in lane when I'm in school. And the key is that Forest is a school. It's an excellent school, but it is not a mental health service. We need to have some training. We need to support young people and safeguard them. But actually, our role is not in terms of mental health treatment. So we are tier 1, and we work closely, of course, with GPs, with school nurses, and indeed in some cases with social workers in order to provide support. In more serious cases, it would go to tier 2. And this is where we have child psychologists or educational psychologists and family therapists who are more specialised in the work that they do. Many families work with tier 3, occupational therapists, clinical child psychologists, child and adolescent psychiatrists. And then lastly, at the most serious end, we work very closely with inpatient services in order to provide support and indeed specialists doing the work to aid a young person's recovery. And I'm very pleased to say that we have a record over a number of years in relation to reintegration of young people who have been in inpatient cares. That's where families and the school have to work really closely together because there's no one bespoke package. We have to work really hard in relation to timetable adjustments, subject adjustments, time of day. All of these things are absolutely on the table and something that we must discuss to underpin the young person's recovery. So bearing in mind that school is a tier 1, which includes our counselling provision Place to Be, this is a great opportunity for me to invite Amanda, our school project manager, to give you more of an insight into our Place to Be provision.
Hello everyone, it's lovely to be with you this evening. My name is Amanda Gale. I am the school project manager here at Forest, and you'll notice my email address there, and I would say please do note that down if you wish to get in touch. I'm really happy to arrange a meeting so that we can discuss any questions you have, any support for your child. I'll explain a little bit about the service and then you'll get more of an understanding about what we actually offer here at Place to Be. So I have worked at Place to Be for since 2011 now, and I've been at Forest for about 4 years. And Place to Be has been providing high quality mental health services in schools for nearly 30 years with the aim of improving children and young people's emotional well-being and their mental health. And so we really look at the whole school approach. We work with the whole school community. So I'm here 5 days a week managing the Place to Be service. Next slide, please. Thank you. So there is a range of interventions to support the pupils, the parents and the carers, and also the school staff. And this is with a view to providing children and young people with support early on to help them build lifelong coping skills that they can take with them. And as Mr. Kane said, early intervention really is key. And we believe that promoting good mental health is everybody's business. So Place to Be regularly evaluates and reports on its outcomes, which then informs the clinical approach and ensures that the interventions we offer are both effective and appropriate. And we work very closely with our specialist safeguarding team. It's great to have access to them, and also our educational psychologist who has an expert understanding and training in special educational needs. So what does that look like at Forest? So our clinical model, well, if we start with the children and young people, so if we were to offer an intervention to your child or young person, the first thing we would want to do would be a proper assessment. And what that would look like would be gathering information from you, you're the expert on your child, from school staff who know your child or young person, and also from the child themselves. And for an assessment to take place, we would need your consent for that up until the age of 16. So it's really important that we work together there, and then we can think together about what is the best intervention to be offered for your young person, your child at that moment. So one-to-one counselling is on offer here. They run in blocks of 10 sessions. They're weekly. They're 45 minutes. We normally have a review session around session 7, and then we decide does your child need another 10 sessions, or are we okay to finish at 10? And what we're looking for pupils to access one-to-one counselling is they have to want to come. In fact, for any of the Place to Be services, they really have to want to come. For one-to-one counselling, it's great if they have a good understanding of why it is they want to come, so they're aware of the things that they would like to change, and that we find that's the most effective way for the young people to really make full use of the service. Place to Talk, you would have received some information last week about Place to Talk. This is the self-referral service, which is open to all the students, unless you wish your child to opt out. These are informal sessions, maybe 15, 20 minutes, and they normally take place at lunchtime or at quarter, or maybe in tutor time. So the students don't come out of their lessons for these. It's not a counselling intervention. This is for them to come and chat through any difficulties they might be having. And we'd like to make these sessions more solution focused to try to support that child or young person in the moment so that they can get on with their day. And it might be that if your child is coming to Place to Talk a few times, you might think, actually, do you maybe like to look at some one-to-one counselling? In which case we would get in touch with you so we could discuss that together. Group work can also happen for a targeted group that might need some support with friendships or any issue that's happening within school. Within the prep school, we do a Journey of Hope. It's called intervention, which works on building resilience and coping strategies. And then for the secondary school, this isn't group work. This is a KIT. Is knowledge. It stands for Knowledge Insight Tools, and that is a CBT based approach to support with low mood and anxiety. So there's a whole range of interventions that might be suitable for your young person or your child. And if we're not the right service for you, then we can certainly help with signposting and forwarding on to next steps. And parents and carers, I hope you did take my email address, because parent or carer partnership is where we can discuss your child. If they're behaviour problems at home or emotional problems, you want to think things through, do please let me know. In the prep school, we have what's called PIPT, Personalised Individual Parenting Training. We have a family practitioner who comes in to work with families, and we also have a Place to Be Parenting Smart website. It is geared towards children aged between 4 and 11, but actually some of the hints and tips are useful for slightly older children too. And then for school staff, Place to Be can do assemblies and inset days and training for staff. And I also offer place to think consultations to staff. And this is where we think together around a child or a group of children who might be struggling in some way. And we think about how we might support them. And I also work very closely with the heads of section so that they have a good overall view of which of their students are attending Place to Be, and also with the SENCOs as well. And what I'm hoping that shows is that all together we can really provide a service that supports your children when they need it and where they need it. So it was lovely to see you. I'm going to hand you back to Mr. Kane.
Thanks so much, Amanda. And yes, of course, parents and carers, please do get in touch at any point. And just to recap, so our Place to Be is earliest intervention, short to mid-term work. It's delivered at school, and the school working with Place to Be is the lead agency. I'm often asked about, if we have Place to Be, why would we refer to CAMHS? Of course, we have to refer to CAMHS, who are the specialists. It moves up the tiers. So longer term work, more complex, could include depression, anxiety, self-harm, suicidal ideation, and CAMHS become the lead agency, and they would absolutely direct our work. I do appreciate that waiting lists in CAMHS can be very long. I know some families who are able may pursue a private route. That's something that we absolutely want to work alongside families with, and it's really important that the school and any external professionals do talk, so we can make sure the care in school is absolutely right. We certainly do need to be guided and led by medical professionals. In terms of this collaboration, we have to work with external agencies. That's what a school does. We've got to reach out to external agencies. And 5 years ago, we worked with 13 different external agencies in safeguarding across the whole year. We're now working with around 52, or certainly last year we worked with 52, and we've got over 100 on our books. So trying to find places that can provide excellent support and we can signpost families to and work closely with them is something that we take very seriously, and has increased, and I'm pleased to say has grown in terms of enabling access to specialist care. All good schools say, come and talk to us. All good schools will say to young people, and indeed to families, come and talk to us. If there's anything you're concerned about, please come and talk to us. And that's absolutely something that we do. We know that in mental health that you need to do more than that. So our line now is, if you have any concerns around mental health, come and talk to us. But if you're not going to talk to us, make sure you talk to somebody. And I know many families from Forest will have these cards, these digital partners with whom we work. So, for example, there's the crisis line provided by Shout, which we can access as a Place to Be school, and young people can access support. There's online counselling provided by Puth, who are the experts in that particular field. We also encourage young people, if they wish to download the Tell Me app. This is a fully moderated, 100% moderated by adults app, where young people can speak and share supportive advice. And this is really designed for people who are never going to talk to an adult. If you're going to talk to somebody, please do. And also the beauty of Tell Me is that it is 100% moderated and safe. And then lastly, we always signpost young people and their families to our good friends at Papyrus, who are the experts in suicide prevention. I want to signpost all families to our policy. If you can find the policy section on the website, well done. And when you do find that policy section on the website, you will find the mental health policy, which is really for the senior school, but actually includes information across the whole school. And within that policy, you'll see our practices, our what we say we do. And of course, if there's anything ever that families feel that we are not doing what we say we do, then please do get in contact. Within this policy, we go from some information that provided by Mental Health First Aid England. And there's an excellent diagram that they give that gives 4 categories across protective and risk factors. And these things can both be protective, and indeed they can be risk factors. So let's start with the individual. Let's start with the young person themselves. And of course, self-esteem can be very protective, but of course, very low self-esteem can manifest risk. These things don't necessarily mean that it's going to lead directly to a mental health condition, but these are things that I just would like parents and carers to be aware of, so you can monitor. Self-esteem, of course, sits very closely with self-confidence. In terms of self-regulation, it's something we talk a lot about in school, and it's the ability for the children and young people in our care to be able to regulate themselves. I like to break it out into 4 things. So trust of self, trust of others, self-disclosure, for example, how much they say, and then willingness to take risks. And families will all know that there are Goldilocks moments there. There's just right, which is going to be different for every person. But I would say that if you know that your child has a very low trust of self, they don't really believe in themselves or what they do, they don't really take on advice either, so trust of others is low. And indeed, they don't say a lot, they don't disclose much over a long period of time. That might mean that actually there's things there in their self-regulation that they might need some additional support with. Of course, they're at home more than they're at school. And as a parent carer myself, of course, we have our role to play. And it's, if we can possibly establish very supportive, long-term adult relationships across the family, clear and consistent parenting and caring. And of course, I reference economic stability, which is incredibly important post-pandemic. And acutely aware that many families will experience economic instability. And that's something that we must be aware may have an impact or may have an effect upon the children and young people. Well, school is a very important aspect because apart from the family home, they spend a lot of time with us. And what we try and establish through high impact pastoral care under Mrs. Milton's excellent leadership is that every young person feels known, liked and valued as an individual, that every young person feels connected, has a sense of belonging. And that needs to involve a coordinated approach to mental health, which is why we underpin that with training for staff, with our place to be provision, with assemblies and tutor times for the young people, so actually we can keep this conversation going. And then lastly, the wider community, everything they do apart from the things that I've already mentioned, and a wider network of support, and wherever that may come from, and a sense of safety and security. And I would urge families to just revisit these things as things to be aware can be very protective, and indeed at times can be risk factors. And of course they can change. So something that was very protective can actually become a risk factor. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to lead to a mental health condition, but it's possibly something that may increase the risk. Certainly the risk is higher for young people with SEND, special educational needs and disabilities, and there is some research that suggests that the risk around mental health conditions is higher for those young people who are in the LGBTQ+ community. In our policy, we reference the most common things that we see. And the first thing is adverse childhood experiences. And I just want to spend 5 minutes or so talking you through this, because we've done quite a lot of work in this in school. And this is where, although not everyone has adverse childhood experiences, 70% of us do across the United Kingdom, and it may well manifest in terms of mental health down the line. I think what I'm about to show you is also really important for all young people, whether they have ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, or not. So research tells us that the following are ACEs, are adverse childhood experiences, and a huge number, in advance of 70% in the United Kingdom of people, adults and children, have experienced these ACEs. Just having experienced ACEs, again, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to manifest in any way, but it could do. And there was a very good study by Bellis, which looked at over 4,000 people in the United Kingdom from age 18 to 65 across all aspects of diversity, so from race and ethnicity, faith and belief, socioeconomic background. And what they discovered via that study, and please do check it out, was that people with a significant number of ACEs were 2 times more likely to binge drink or have a poor diet, 3 times more likely to smoke, 5 times more likely to have had sex while under 16, 6 times more likely to have caused or experienced an unplanned teenage pregnancy, and 7 times more likely to have been involved in violence in the last year. So ACEs do matter. And in order to support young people, with or without ACEs, an understanding of regulation becomes essential. So when a child or a young person is dysregulated, you might find that they are in this snow globe effect. They are completely dysregulated. All of our instincts will say, calm down, or chill out, or take it easy, or you're being naughty. All of our instincts are saying that. And actually, if we try and engage with them, particularly if we become frustrated and raise our voice, as hard as that is, the situation is likely to escalate. Now, that's for all children. It's actually exacerbated by young people who have experienced ACEs. And what this means is what we're trying to do is get a level of consistency and a level of predictability. And my strongest advice, and the advice I give to staff at school, is to try and focus on co-regulation first. When a young person is so dysregulated, they're not able to self-regulate. So telling them to calm down is not going to help. What we should be saying is, I'm going to help you. We're going to talk about this, but let's take a moment. And let's use devices such as tissues or a glass of water or a little walk or side by side or take a moment, I'll see you in a bit later. Those sorts of things will help to underpin co-regulation because the opposite is going to result in escalation. And I'm sure many of us will recognize that. In most cases, when children are regulating well, they'll go from top down. So they'll understand what's happening. They'll process it on a social emotional basis. They will self-regulate. And occasionally they will fight or flight, something we've all seen. Actually, if somebody who has experienced a number of adverse childhood experiences, it is possible that they will do this the other way around. So there'll be fight or flight to begin with. And that's why helping a young person to co-regulate first before we engage is absolutely essential. That promotes regulation, which allows them to regulate on a social emotional basis, and then they'll understand exactly what is required and what they need to express. I think for all families, something we say to staff is just be aware of your tone and your volume. Something I learnt moving to England 30 years ago was that if I shouted in school, a child would cry. It might not be the child standing next to me, but if I raised my voice and my Glaswegian tones came to the fore, it would upset somebody. So I learned very quickly not to do that. And actually, it's much more effective to talk in a low tone, in a low volume. Be aware of your proximity and height. If a young person is in fight or flight, try not to close the space. Try not to get too close to them. That will only exacerbate the fight or flight. Try not to talk down to them as well. Try and get on their level. It is possible that young people who are experiencing mental health distress or indeed disorders, and indeed a young person with ACEs, may try to exert some element of control. Now, this is because they feel like things are out of control. So that can present in anger. It can present in tears. It can present in, if somebody doesn't know about the theory of all of this, it can occasionally present as someone being rude. But actually, that's not the case at all. We've got to help the young person to co-regulate in order for them to be able to self-regulate. I'm going to reference active listening a bit later. Families need to pay attention to the young people. We were very fortunate to have Caitlin Moran in to speak to us at the start of the term. And she gave a very moving account of supporting her daughter through very serious mental health issues. And the thing that she's found worked best, all the way through it, was to be really human and to say, this is really difficult, and I'm so sorry you're having a difficult time, and I'm absolutely here for you. And to listen more than speaking, to listen so that you're speaking 20% of the time, and hopefully the young person is speaking 80% of the time. In terms of trust and safety, we've got to put our devices down. We've got to close that machine. We've got to move away. We've got to be non-judgmental, undivided attention, which will allow the young person greater scope to be able to express what they're feeling. I think silence is really important, to have a moment of calm and to not interrupt it, because what might follow could be really, really important. So do allow a silence without it becoming awkward, in order to try and get the young person to be able to tell you what it is they're concerned about. Paraphrasing can be very good. We talk about this in school. We're actually saying, so this is what you're telling me. I understand this is what you're saying. Have I got this right? Again, that can be really effective when you're working with a young person. And please know, I absolutely know for families, this can be very distressing. To have a young person who's experiencing mental health difficulties, it can be very wearing. It can be very frustrating. All of those things are perfectly normal and human reactions. Follow up. If adults say they're going to do something, we need to do it. And that's really important. So if it's a check-in or a catch-up, or we're going to go somewhere at the weekend, if you say you're going to do something, if we say we're going to do something, we absolutely need to do it. Of course, anxiety is a significant concern, and very, very widespread at national level. What we try and say to our young people is, we all experience anxiety. And we all get anxious, and lots of you on the call will have young people who experience these things. It's the same, of course. It's the same, of course, with depression. And this slide should be talking about depression, whereby these things are things that we see all the time. For example, something that they used to enjoy, they no longer want to engage with at all, and that can be really hard for families, because perhaps it's something that you all did together, or perhaps it was something that kind of shaped the weekend, and they don't want to do it anymore. That means we have to try and address what's going on in order to try and get them back to getting enjoyment out of things. And in terms of mental health, processing to mental ill health, that's the key. And I would ask parents and carers to consider the following. So first of all, take a moment to look at your protective factors and your risk factors. What's going well and what you're concerned about. And you can kind of balance it out. It's not an exact science, of course, but just I think it's a useful thing to consider what's going well for the young person, and indeed what are the things that you're most concerned about. How long has this been going on for? You will notice a mood fluctuate and go up and down. You may notice someone feeling really sad, and you may notice someone experience anxiety. But how long has that been going on for? And if that's becoming to be an extended period of time, that's the time that intervention needs to happen. What are the severities of the symptoms? I refer you back to one of the first slides that spoke about ability to learn, ability to express feelings, ability to engage in positive relationships. If this is impacting on those things and the severity is clear, and the severity is becoming physical, for example, of course psychological, then that's the time to seek support, because it will be having a significant impact upon the child, young person, and indeed those around. So I think these are the things that one needs to consider, bearing in mind that we're all going to see young people be anxious. We're all going to see young people feel in low mood at certain times. Something that's interesting for families to think about is that, was the pandemic an adverse experience for us all? And I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. And young people, and indeed families and carers, have shown remarkable resilience, and a thing that we didn't know we had to prepare for. And when you consider the amount of time out of education, let's consider our year 7s and year 8s who through their primary school missed out on key moments of socialization and developing communication. We're aware of that, we're building that, we'll continue to do the work in order to help people to move forward. But we can't forget that, because it is actually still very relevant. I mention eating disorders because on a national scale, this is on the increase, and something that is, of course, of great concern. You will know of conditions such as anorexia and bulimia, very serious, very severe, have significant impact. And this is where the school, families, the young person, and external professionals need to work really closely. And there is no one size fits all. There is no one package. We need to just keep communicating in order to help that young person have the best possible outcome as they move forward with recovery. I mentioned this, which is other specified feeding eating disorders. So this is the vast majority are not actually diagnosed as anorexia or bulimia or other conditions. They're not necessarily known as to what exactly it is, but it is really concerning. It has concerns around eating and weight. We've worked really closely with a charity called BEAT, who are the experts in the field, and I refer parents and carers to their website, where they have excellent resources for you to consider. My advice is don't wait. My advice is move quicker here, and if you have concerns, please do share with the school. You may wish to visit GP, you may wish to seek a referral to CAMHS, all of those things. The quicker we move, actually the quicker one hopes the recovery will be. I'm going to mention self-harm, and I refer you back to my self-care message at the start. This is really, really difficult for families, and it's really difficult for, I think there's a generational gap here, and it's really difficult for us to fully understand why a young person is doing that. Often in the past, people have spoken about attention seeking. I would ask Forest families to delete that from our vocab completely. It's really unhelpful. It sort of attaches a judgment, almost a blame to it, and as emotional and difficult as self-harm for our young people can be, I think it's better to see it as a kind of connection seeking or attachment seeking. There's something going on that they feel the need to do this. It's going to take some time in order to replace that behaviour with a healthy mechanism, but we're absolutely committed to do it. I'd ask families to be on the lookout for different things. So self-harm, once, you know, we often do talk about cutting, and that's the one that's most visible and we're most aware of. But actually self-harm presents in different ways. And again, earliest intervention is absolutely key. At school, this is safeguarding work. So this is going to land with me as DSL designated safeguarding lead, or one of the excellent deputy designated safeguarding leads across the sections. And they're going to look to work really closely with the people, really closely with parents and carers. With external support, we will signpost to A&E, GP, to CAMHS. It could be a long journey, but please know that the schools are absolutely there with you in order to support the young people. Once we know that somebody is experiencing self-harm or indeed episodes of self-harm, we will bring in what we call a safety plan, which is really a coaching conversation. And what we'll do is we'll ask the young person to have some responsibility, to actually have agency in order to help themselves. That's where the real magic lies here. And that's ultimately working with adults where we'll be able to support the young person forward. And these are questions which I hope you'll be interested to see that we would ask, just to reassure parents and carers. You'll see the penultimate bullet point. We absolutely will be working with parents and carers because they're coming home to you every night, and we're going to need to work together to keep the young person safe. We will want parent care contribution to this, as to our work, as to what we can do in school, and indeed families use it to tell us what they're going to do at home. We'll also signpost to external support. A word on suicide ideation. Again, on a national level, it is on an increase. Just to be absolutely clear with all families, we will never ever minimise this. So if a young person is using language around suicide ideation, we will always treat it as a safeguarding and child protection concern, and indeed we will process it at that level, designated safeguarding lead or deputy designated safeguarding lead. We will loop parents and carers in immediately, because that's absolutely essential. And again, we will want to work very, very closely with you. And we will want to work with external experts. So we will signpost to A&E, to GP, to CAMHS, and Papyrus. Now, Papyrus are the experts in this field, and they will do an online safety plan with a young person and indeed with their family. So that's something that we would absolutely encourage people to do, because this is specialist work, and our safety plan is a coaching conversation. Actually, it needs more specialist input when we're talking about thoughts around suicide. So what can you do? So this is a suite, if you like, and I do appreciate that there's lots of, you'll have lots of ideas, which I'd love to hear, but I hope it's useful just to hear some ideas that we share in school. First of all, Mental Health First Aid England have a framework where they talk about ALGE. And ALGE is the following. So first of all, we've got the young person, and I'm always very keen that we put the young person right at the centre, that they don't feel things are getting done to them, that they feel that things are getting done with them. And sometimes we have to tell them, but actually it's most effective if we can bring them with us. So the young person's at the centre. The first thing that the adult's family should be doing is should be asking, should be assessing, should be listening, should be hearing their voice, trying to work out what's going on and what they're feeling. Put the young person at the centre. The next thing, high quality listening. Actively being clear that it's undivided attention and this is what matters the most in this moment. Give reassurance. I tell Forest staff to be human. If somebody's sharing something, a young person is sharing something that's really bothering them, that are really upset about, or indeed they're experiencing mental health difficulty, let's do what Caitlin Moran told us to do. Let's say this is really hard. You're doing really well. I'm sorry you're going through this. I'm with you. Let's keep going. We're going to enable support. So for families, that may be more talking. That might be talking to other members of the family. That's very likely in cases of mental health to be seeking professional support. That may well be speaking to the school. And the school's there to provide support. We take our safeguarding responsibility very seriously, as we must. So please do speak to us so we can wrap around and ensure we're enabling. And then, of course, encourage self-care. This is where we're trying to keep that young person at the centre. They can do this. I absolutely believe in this generation. They can do this. So let's encourage them to find out ways that's going to work for them, or indeed for them to communicate to us things that we can do in order to support them. We have a lot of qualified coaches at Forest. We work with a company called Graydon, who've given us a lot of coaching sessions, and to be able to use language that really enables somebody to be at the heart of everything that they do. And we've spoken about 3 types of listening. And first of all, there's me listening. So your me listening might well be saying at the moment, is this going to be finished in time for the One Show? Probably is the answer. But me listening is our internal dialogue. It's the stuff that distracts us. If we're listening to our son or our daughter about what's going on for them, and we're getting distracted, we're not there. We're not present. And I can absolutely disclose to the Forest community that this has happened to me. I've done this. I've made this mistakes at home. If we can try and check our me listening. In terms of mental health, what we actually want is for the young person to be me listening. We want them to be telling us what's going on in their head. That's where the real power lies. What we should be doing is oscillating between micro and macro listening. So micro is where we listen to the words really clearly, and macro is where we listen to everything other than the words. I'll give you a top secret, Forest community. I'm not that good at micro listening to the words. I find it really exhausting. So I tend to rely on macro listening. We're actually trying to feel everything that's going on other than the words, body language, emotional temperature. You notice when somebody, the dynamic, the energy in the room has changed. Really helps to try and understand how they're feeling. But in an ideal world, we would oscillate between listening to every single word and actually using our macro. We can't do micro all the time. It's absolutely exhausting. And that's something that you may well have experienced as well. Because I think if we put the young people at the centre, we can use the 3 truths of coaching, that actually they are capable, they're whole, they can do this. They're having a difficult time, but hopefully in time, and that could be a week, a month, could be a year, it could be more than years, but actually they can do this. And if we believe that, we shift the language away from fixed or broken. We're talking about capable and whole. They may not have all the answers as they go through adolescence, but I guarantee they have some of the answers. And we want to hear from them. We want to give them agency to be able to take ownership on what's going on. And then our role is not to tell. There will be some times that we'll have to tell the young people in our care, or indeed families will have to tell young people. But sometimes it's quite useful to ask them, what do they want? What's going to work for them? What do they think's the next step? What are they looking forward to today? What went well today? Many families will be at the point where you say, what did you do at school today? and your teenager comes home and says grunt or doesn't answer at all. I think that's a challenge to change our questions. Let's head them off at the pass. I quite like, what did you learn today? Or what was cool about today? Or what was the best thing today? Or what was rubbish about today? And actually almost changing those questions means it's much harder for them to go, oh, nothing. That will happen at times, we know. And I think going back to that point around effective questions, when your young person is experiencing difficulties around mental health, I think what, how, where, who are really good questions to ask. I think keeping the questions short and open so they're doing more questions. We don't need to be overly intrusive. And I would encourage parents and carers to try and avoid the question why. It's the obvious question. Why are you feeling like this? Why is this happening? Why are you doing that? I'd stay away from why. Most importantly, because they may not know the answer to why. If you relate that back to self-harm, it's very likely they're not going to be able to tell you exactly why they're doing it, because it's not simple, it's complex. Secondly, I think why has all sorts of things attached to it in terms of judgment, shame, embarrassment, fear, anger. So I would encourage parents and carers to avoid the why and actually stay in the what and the how and make it about them. Parents and carers, you need to look after yourselves. You need to make sure that you can access support as you navigate this tricky time. I commend you for everything you're doing. We have a partnership with the Wellbeing Hub. You can access that from the parent portal, whereby the school has financed membership for our entire community. So if you go into the portal, you have to activate your account first, and once you've logged in, absolutely no charge for parents and carers, you will be able to access Wellbeing Hub resources. And it's a really excellent resource. So for example, there are courses for parents and carers. These are there's a whole set of courses for parents and carers of PrEP children, and there's a whole set of resources for parents and carers of senior school pupils. Now, some of this you will absolutely know, and there'll be nothing new, and there's probably not a lot new that I've shown you tonight, but actually it's really useful to reinforce it, to be reminded, to be refreshed, and maybe to dip in and out, as opposed to doing the courses lesson by lesson, actually dip in and out. I'd like to refer you to the Q&A bit. There's a question and answer tab, which is been filled out by a child psychologist. And actually, these are the questions that young people are asking most. And then here are some answers from the child psychologist who's at the heart of the Wellbeing Hub. Again, it's a really useful point of reference. And I really hope the Forest community using that. I know that over 100 families were using it regularly last year. And certainly we'll signpost the children and young people to it as well. They can't access the parent section and they can't access the members of staff section, but they have their own section where they'll be able to get information as well. Young Minds is a charity that we work with a lot, and they have an excellent parent helpline or web chat or email where parents and carers who are going through challenging circumstances with the young people who are experiencing difficulties around mental health, you can get all sorts of advice and support from Young Minds. And we've signposted a number of families here, and I know they've had good advice. And actually on the Young Minds website, there's parenting guides, there's parent carer support. There's a lot of the information that I've relayed to you about how to talk to young people about mental health. I'd like to refer you also to Mind, who, of course, many of you will know do excellent work in the mental health sphere. And again, they have dedicated sections on the website for parents and carers, because let's be absolutely clear, this is tough, this is hard, particularly if a young person is experiencing mental health challenges that go on for a period of time. I absolutely appreciate that. That brings us into land for now, and there is my details. Of course, please don't hesitate to ever be in touch with us. I did say at the start that the questions may well come after the session, and I hope that you will be in touch. Please, if there's anything that I haven't mentioned that you think we absolutely should know, or there's something that you'd like to discuss, of course, if it's something on an individual basis, I will make sure you get to the right member of staff. I'm going to say thank you so much for your time and attention tonight. I'd also like to thank Amanda for her contribution. The QR code is now on the screen, and we would really appreciate your feedback, because we want these webinars to be for you and something that you find useful. Thanks so much for your attention tonight, and I very much look forward to seeing you in person in and around the school very soon. All best wishes. Thank you.